How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I grew up in South Boston, close to Weber State.
Hello, everyone. I'm Noelle Cockett, President of Utah State University, and it's a great pleasure to be here today and be able to welcome you to our Research Landscape seminar series. I have to say that it's with some nostalgia that I'm here today. Some of you may know that I will be stepping down as president, but this Research Landscape has an incredible connection in my heart to what we want to convey to people about Utah State University, and that is our passion for environmental stewardship. It is exactly what Utah State and all of our people believe in. And so through the Research Landscape, which actually was created in 2018, has had dozens of our research faculty, our outreach faculty, as well as statewide leaders who are working on the natural resource issues that Utah State is dealing with. As you've heard many times, one of our most exciting parts of our Research Landscape when we were developing it was we were going to bring it to Salt Lake City. And we knew that that would allow many of you to be able to come, hopefully on a regular basis, to our Research Landscape because of where we're holding it. We identified O.C. Tanner through our great friends, Dave Peterson, CEO of O.C. Tanner, as a place we could host our series. Dave is also a member of the USU Board of Trustees, and so welcome this opportunity to host us. I'm very pleased to tell you that Dave Peterson and O.C. Tanner has committed to continuing their support for the Research Landscape series. So although Dave is not here today, let's in spirit thank him for his work. And so I want to mention though that when we crafted the concept of the Research Landscape, we did it more than wanting a seminar series. Many of you people can just log in to the internet and find seminars that you can watch. What we wanted was an active interaction, an active dialogue. And so I've seen those dialogues. I have seen those questions. I have seen that passion. I have seen those issues coming out from all of you in the audience. And that's what makes our Research Landscape series so rich. And I want to, again, as this is with a bit of nostalgia, I want to thank you for those that have been regulars at our Research Landscape series and those that are new, and I hope those that are new will also become regulars at this event. Now, each time we prepare one of our events, we look at tackling challenges that we really are facing here in our state. But we also want to make sure that we provide tools and thoughts and direction of how we can optimize these issues for the state. Again, I want to thank you folks for being participants. And hopefully you've learned things and you've heard things and you've discussed things that you can take out into your own circles as we address these very, very important issues for Utah. I want to also express my appreciation to all the partners who actually have helped us put on Research Landscapes. As you've heard, O.C. Tanner, but also we have state, city, county, and community leaders who have been here to help us introduce topics and engage in that dialogue. I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't call out and give an incredible shout of thanks to the U.S. Office of Research and the research communication team. I have been so proud of these events and the high quality of what it is, and again, creating dialogue rather than just a simple seminar. And I do need to note a special thanks to Anna McIntyre, who has led this concept all the way from development of the idea into actual implementation. Now, one of the things that this actually had a very deliberate plan. First of all, the research landscape was identified as a way USU could show our strengths, our research, our outreach, our education in land, water, and air. And so that's what we focused on. That hence is the name of the series. But it was also the start of us creating the Institute for Land, Water, Air at USU. And I know we've talked about how we have over 150 faculty at USU that work directly on land, water, air issues. So the research landscape is like delivering their information, and the Institute is the umbrella over all those great, great things that are happening. And it caught on, the concept of that institute caught on so well that we actually were able to endow that. And now it's named the Janet Quinney Lawson Institute for Land, Water, Air. People are buying into this so strongly. We just had an event a couple of months ago where someone has given an additional $1 million to the Institute to be used for students working on these issues. And if you want to have development of leaders for tomorrow, working with students on these issues now is how to do that. And I know our speaker is going to really talk about development of students and how they will be addressing these in the future. So when we were here in November of last year, again, I had the opportunity to be here. It was Great Salt Lake. And many of you I recognize from there, very deep concerns at the state level. All right, that was November. Now we're in, I think it's June. And we had an historically wet winter. And that then is filling the Great Salt Lake. But I did fly over that the other day, and it's not where it should be. This will continue to be an issue and really, really needs a lot of work to come. So I do hope that people don't go, oh, snow, Great Salt Lake has been fixed, because it's not. So we continue to be very, very passionate about the Great Salt Lake at Utah State, and that will be part of today's conversation. David Anderson, our presenter, will talk about his work in his department on how he addresses a number of community challenges about the Great Salt Lake. Dave is a landscape architect, and therefore he brings a unique perspective to these conversations. You know, landscape architect, Great Salt Lake, well, you're gonna see it really does add another very important dimension to the conversation. And so he's going to talk about the process that landscape architecture at USU uses when you're doing community, city, or regional planning. David is a professional practice professor in the Department of Landscape, Architecture, and Environmental Planning at USU. And a little aside, when I was Dean of the College of Agriculture, we actually recruited that department to the college. And I will tell you, people are like, landscape architecture, College of Ag, and Applied Science, but it is a phenomenal fit. And so glad that I could help facilitate that. Anyway, Dave has both teaching and extension assignments, which is a fabulous combo. Among many of his teaching assignments, Dave actually leads the department's Introduction to Landscape Architect. It is the largest class of that type in the United States and has over 1,000 students each year. An alumnus of the LAEP program, Dave joined the USU faculty in 2012. He and I crossed paths very frequently because he was the director of the Utah State University Botanical Center in Kaysville, so the one along the highway really launched that to what it is today. Dave has extensive experience and interest in water-conserving landscapes. That's why we do landscape architecture in agriculture, regional identity, sustainable design, community engagement, and environmental education. Now, before we turn the time over to Dave, we're going to hear from Brian Steed. Brian Steed is the executive director of our very own Janet Quinney Lawson Institute of Land, Water, Air. But yesterday, see how all these things come together? Yesterday, he was confirmed as Utah's first Great Salt Lake Commissioner. State and the state legislature has acknowledged Great Salt Lake needs a commissioner, and they brought the right person. He's been at USU in this institute since July 2022, so just less than a year, and already is connecting USU research and programs with government and public partners on issues such as what are the policies. He was around the Capitol all last legislative session. He's been the executive director of Utah Department of Natural Resource, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management's deputy director for policy and programs at the national level. He's been the chief of staff to Utah Congressman Chris Stewart Steve. No, it's Chris Stewart. And served as the deputy county attorney for Iron County. And he's taught political and economic classes at USU. So, Brian, let's get started.
President, for that kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Brian Steed, and I am the Executive Director of the Janet Quinney Lawson Institute for Land, Water, and Air at Utah State, and as was mentioned, apparently the first Great Salt Lake Commissioner, which is a job that has brought on both congratulations and condolences, but excited to get to work on all things Great Salt Lake. Before getting into my remarks today, I wanted to express my gratitude and profound appreciation to President Cockett for her efforts in the land, water, and air space, and in research landscapes in particular. I can quite honestly say I wouldn't be here today but for her and her vision on bringing land, water, and air to the fore of what Utah State does, and to bring that out to make sure that people understand what we can contribute. So truly, President, you'll be missed, and thank you so much for your dedication. This past year, we were discussing different types of projects the Institute for Land, Water, and Air could be involved in. And someone mentioned, I think at one point early on, that landscape architecture and environmental planning were considering doing a charrette. And they kept talking about a charrette. And I think it was mentioned maybe 16 times in the meeting before I had the courage to ask, what exactly is a charrette?
Yes.
I'm excited for Dave to be able to explain that process today, and we've been able to work with Dave and his students and his team this past year. I've become truly impressed by the process and how it influences students' understandings of how to get things done, as well as how research at a university and work at a university can provide real-world solutions to the various problems we all face. One noteworthy project that I think that we would love to hear more about and we're willing to share is how Utahns utilize water across the state, and we're excited to hear about that, as well as other things that we're talking about. Dave is going to discuss Great Salt Lake among other things today. He's going to discuss the Charrette process, and he is going to address how that Charrette process really does inform land, water, and air planning in our state, and how that involves just really intensive but also rapid response projects on how we move the ball forward when it comes to these very pressing problems. I think that's really awesome, because ultimately it's going to take all of us to get together on these things. Land, water, and air are completely interconnected with our human welfare and our human behaviors. So what we choose and how we engage with our natural environment will certainly impact the world in which we live and our quality of life therein. So I'm really excited to welcome my friend Dave. I guess I should also say my neighbor Dave. And by the way, if you want someone to tell you how to make a great looking yard, the Andersons practice what they preach because it looks really great. We're really excited that he's here and willing to share his knowledge and expertise with us. Please join me in welcoming Dave. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thanks for being our neighbor. And thanks to Vice President Burrow and your leadership and your team for carrying this on, this great lecture series. Thanks to President Cockett for having this be such a high priority. It's so important, and we're grateful. I would express that gratitude as well to you for all things personal and professional for me. I'm very grateful for your support over the years. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for coming. I grew up in central Utah, dry part of the world, and so I know all about these issues related to water and other things, but in my position at USU, I'm really fortunate to do things that I enjoy and am concerned about at the same time. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what we do in landscape architecture. It's a really cool department, and I'm preaching to the choir because I recognize a bunch of faces here, some of whom are my mentors, like Jan over here. And we prepare and inform, though, exceptional practitioners, scholars, leaders, and citizens to address challenges of landscapes and communities all across the globe, really. But our graduates are the practitioners of tomorrow, many of whom choose to practice in the Intermountain West. We aim to empower students, individuals, and communities to make aesthetic and ecologically and socially responsible landscape planning and design decisions in support of both people and the environment. And that's a really critical thing to remember. Quickly, I want to just give you a little bit of a distinction between what landscape architecture is versus environmental planning. Our department prepares students and scholars at multiple levels of professional practice and scholarship. And one of the things we really instill in our students, along with theoretical training, is this idea of critical thinking, being able to solve problems, and regardless of what the problem is. And we work to engage them to benefit local communities on a bunch of different scale design projects. So landscape architecture involves planning and design and managing the management and nurturing of built and natural environments. And we're uniquely qualified to do that. We plan all kinds of things like parks and campuses and streetscapes and golf courses and trails and plazas and residents. This campus out here, Mr. Tanner was a great advocate of water features, fountains, and some landscape architects got to design some of the work that he funded, and that's really neat. This image here is Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, downtown Dallas. It's really cool because it's a 5+ acre park that sits on top of an 8-lane recessed freeway. And so this was built in 2012, and it is reconnecting downtown Dallas that was severed by this enormous road. And now they call it the heart of Dallas, in the heart of Dallas. And so it's become known as the city's town square, and it welcomes more than 1 million people a year, earning national acclaim. And so this took clear vision on the part of a bunch of people in Dallas leadership, along with some exceptional designers, the landscape architecture firm of OJB, of whom, which has a bunch of USU alumni working there, including one of my friends, to design and build this remarkable place. So this is a great example of what landscape architecture does. Here's an example, or some things that environmental planners do, though. They recognize the relationship between biophysical attributes of a region and the human dimensions of settlement and culture, building expertise in large-scale landscape level analysis and planning, and they serve as leaders within a transdisciplinary environment to develop better alternatives for land use decisions and policy. That requires a lot of skill and understanding, both environmental planning, but in addition, economic development, natural resources, environmental policy. They need to know all about all of those kinds of things. And the issues become very, very complex. An example of environmental planning that's close to home that I thought of, some of you may recognize, is this very unique, sensitive housing development outside of St. George called Kayenta. It's a low-impact development that grew out of the concept of living lightly on the land and appreciating the beauty around it. So there was a lot of environmental planning and analysis that went into the development and understanding of sensitively placing infrastructure and making this such a special place. So that's a good example. Scale is also something that's really important to think about. It's an integral part of design, and sometimes we leave that out of the equation, but both in the natural and the built environment. For example, we have to address details like this beautiful little stairway here, making decisions about materials and plants and the aesthetic attribute and safety, site-related things, circulation, access, views, what is this place supposed to do and function, and how are people involved in it, all the way to regional and very large, big problem kinds of things at a very big, wicked scale, I would say. For example, the Great Salt Lake is definitely in that category. Another thing that's really important to think about is context. That's kind of a strange word. Sometimes I use it a lot in my classes, and sometimes my students look at me real strangely, like, what in the world are you talking about? But it's just thinking about what's going on peripherally and considering what's happening beyond boundaries. In the case of, for example, this one, here's a sports field, sports complex, but look where it's placed. And look what's going on around it. All of the different land uses and influences, commercial and residential, and this freeway and roads and the cityscape and everything that's influencing what's going on within the boundaries of this little sports park. Contextually, it needs a lot of attention to make it work well. As was introduced, I'm going to talk just a little bit about this funny word called Charrette. It's an event that our department hosts annually in the winter, and if you speak French, it literally means a wagon or a small cart. So, way back in the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, Students were working feverishly on their projects, and around came this cart, the Charrette, okay, to pick up their projects. They were literally on big boards, and they're finishing feverishly to get their work done right up until the last minute. And they put their carts in, and there are probably students trailing after saying, I need to add this little thing, as the cart was being taken away. So this word translates now to a very feverish, intense activity, and that's where designers use it, and that's what we do. So every year, we conduct something called a design charrette, and some of you are very familiar with this process, but we partner with a stakeholder, usually an entity that has requested partnering with us, such as a municipality or a county or a nonprofit organization, and the stakeholder pays some modest cost recovery things like food, students like food, and transportation for field trips and editing and production, but it's very modest. This year was our 20th year in conducting this, and my friend and colleague and mentor Dave Bell, the man in the center there, was really who started this. So how this works, we engage all of our students. We cancel our classes for a week in January, and so then we engage all of our students, from doctoral students down to freshmen. We put them in multidisciplinary teams of about 10 or 15 students, and this is the kind of stuff they do. They get down on the floor and draw on maps, and seniors lead these teams, and they focus on stakeholder identified issues. For example, recreation, circulation, open space, culture and the arts, transportation, things like that. Each team is advised by a faculty member in landscape architecture. This poor team got me, and poor Cooper, I think, is here, one of the students who was in this picture. He was on my team. But we have faculty advise these teams. Practitioners are invited to participate. Experts from other disciplines are involved also. And so this is, so Vice President Burrow might be wondering, where are the charts and numbers and graphs? Is this really some research? It's a form of applied research where we're taking information, the best information we can gather from our colleagues at Utah State and elsewhere, and applying that, using it as effectively as we can to make that, and extending it out into communities and sharing it to make the best suggestions and recommendations that we possibly can. And then our stakeholders participate as well. And the more they participate, the better the outcome is. At the end of the week then, on Friday, they have to deliver. And this was in late January of this year, and there was a presentation, and they have to talk about the things that they've learned and the ideas and concepts they've developed, working together collaboratively. So then the seniors move on, and they take the top 5 or so ideas and things that kind of rose to the top as the hot potatoes, and they focus on those for the remainder of the semester in what's called a capstone studio. And those stakeholders then that we've been dragging along continue to participate with us through the rest of the semester. It's an intense and exhausting experience. This is not staged. I came upon this kid, one of our graduate students, and he was just done. So, but it's a remarkable experience for our students. Here's a few of them talking about what they experienced.
This experience ranks the highest among all the work I've done within this program. It's a culmination of our entire academic career, and so our skills are the most developed they've been so far in this program. But it's also something that I'm personally very passionate about. I grew up on the Great Salt Lake. It's actually one of the reasons I started in this program, so being able to bring that all together at the end of our academic career was an incredible experience. The amount of people who showed up and the amount of people who are really excited to be a part of this project shows like an incredible investment from the community. We conducted a week-long charrette, which was fairly intensive and it's program-wide. And in teams of 2 as seniors, we led a group of about 15 people through a week-long charrette, really diving into the issues on the Great Salt Lake.
I think environmental planning really focuses on planning at the bioregional ecosystem scale. And I think in this area, in this ecosystem, water is essential to that. Coming into the department, I didn't really have an awareness of just like how complicated water is. Being able to work with a real problem and real stakeholders in depth for a long period of time was, it was invaluable, I think.
I really appreciate that we're able to work with real architects, real planners, real plant specialists. It made the project seem feasible. This is something that's happening, this is something that needs to be fixed and worked on. The communication of the Great Salt Lake and the importance of it and how to either fix it or change it or just the lifestyle we're living and how it affects us was really important to all the other ideas, really, because if we can't communicate, then nothing was going to happen.
So why do we do this? What's the value? Obviously, it's an incredible teaching activity that we undertake with our students. It's a powerful example of community-engaged learning where students interact directly with stakeholders with some expected deliverables, and it definitely raises the stakes for them, and they deliver. It's mutually beneficial, though, for our students and for those who partner with us. So what do we do? Okay, so, Vice President Burrow, this is for you. So you're a chemistry person, right? So the Charrette process is catalytic. We get stuff going. Just like in chemistry, we're adding the right catalyst to the mixture causes some reaction, working in teams, focusing on specific issues, and then collaborating with others to can create or precipitate, to use another chemistry word, remarkable results. So we get stuff going. We try to promote healthy discussion and dialogue. Not like this, not like at the office where Dwight is droning on and people are losing interest and rolling their eyes and playing on their phones. We don't want this, we want the opposite. We want everyone at the table participating and engaging and working on the topics that are to be addressed. It's about contribution. This remarkable man, Hideo Sasaki, was one of the founding fathers of landscape architecture in the mid-20th century. And he had an inviting and welcoming attitude about participation from as many as possible. And this comment that he made, contribution is the only value, for it brings the advantage of giving more than one person's slant to the problem and shows how differences can come together and be harmonized through active discussion. That's hard. That continued active discussion is not a simple thing. It takes a lot of energy and effort, but it is so valuable and critical to the overall project that we're working on. It's critical to amplify marginalized voices, and both speaking voices and non-speaking voices, like birds at the Great Salt Lake, or urban wildlife, for example. Everyone deserves a voice when deciding how their community will look and feel. And it's essential that we consider everything. Brian touched on this, where all attributes of the environment, water, slope, soil, geology, plants and animals and humans are all interconnected. This web, this interconnected nature is sometimes, I think, something that we slight a little bit or we forget about. So it's important to remember there are always consequences to any change that occurs in the natural world, and that our actions produce ripple effects. The challenge that for many of you in this room as your decision makers around the state is to consider various opportunities and ideas and opinions and then choose the best path forward depending on whatever the project is that you're considering. And so what I hope to share with you is that there are some tools and examples that can make that process more manageable in the future. When considering an issue or a project, it's likely one of the first things that'll be brought up is how much does it cost? How can we do it for the least amount of money? Economics is certainly a piece of the puzzle. Can we afford it? Can we afford to take care of it? Does it put too much of a tax on those who are financially burdened by it? However, consideration of people, the social attribute, and how they interact is also as critical, I believe. The social aspects of asking who benefits from whatever it is, who has access to it, how people will interact with it, the environment, right? And you're starting to see here, many of you will recognize kind of a little triangle of sustainable topics here that are all required to make something work in perpetuity. But considering the environment is essential, the E word is kind of sometimes scoffed at a little bit around here, I think, or we may think of it a little bit superficially as being, recycling or something like that, but it's a lot more involved, and understanding natural systems is absolutely essential. And I would add that addressing the cultural and our influence, our heritage, the historical and artistic aspects of the place will always make a better solution. And so what we're striving for is a balance of these things. And that's what we're trying to do, is hit this in the middle and teach our students that all of these attributes and aspects need to be considered. And our students produce really high quality products for our stakeholders. So when you leave, I hope that there's a few things that you kind of keep in your mind, maybe some simple tools, if you will, to start to illustrate some of the creative and I'll illustrate a few creative and useful outcomes that our students have influenced in doing so. First, we need to look to bring together members of the community who don't normally talk to one another or work together, and who might not be included in planning conversations. In a moment, I'll share a little story about something that happened in Kanab that illustrates this. Secondly, we need to build on strengths that exist in our communities. What makes you unique? What makes your place identifiable? How can you stand out from other places? And there's a little story about Santaquin in southern Utah County that will illustrate a little bit about that. Third is to look at as many ideas as possible, even bad ones. Maybe there aren't bad ideas, there's just lots of ideas, and getting them out on the table is a really good idea. And we'll talk about South Salt Lake, just down a few blocks from here, and the need that they have for adding some recreation and learning facilities that will illustrate that. Finally, considering the larger context of the region. None of our communities operate in isolation, and the changes that we propose will impact the places around us. Opportunities are likely available, though, to us that are only evident if we consider the larger context, if we're looking around. And so this is where the Great Salt Lake Project comes in. We'll illustrate a couple of things. So 4 quick case studies. First, down in southern Utah in Kanab, in a rural context. If you've all been down there, you know there are lots of issues facing that place. The ecosystem, the environment is incredibly fragile. There's a need for housing, as there is almost in every place. Tourism and promotion and branding of the place is something they're very concerned about. Recreation and the overuse of areas for recreation. State highway is an issue it'll talk about, and water is an issue everywhere, but certainly in drier parts of the world, like Kanab. You go down to Kanab and you realize that it's encircled by a whole bunch of incredible places not too far from there. And so it makes it kind of an epicenter for all of these kinds of activities. You come in a little closer and to Kanab proper, and there are some landmarks around the city and physical features that are a benefit to the city, as well as a neighbor up the road called the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary that I'll mention in a minute. So if you've been down there, you'll remember that Highway 89 runs right through town. It's basically, it becomes Main Street in Kanab for a minute, Highway 89, as it does in many towns. And so here's a couple of concepts that our students worked on at the east and west ends of Main Street in Kanab. So one major issue is this Main Street problem, or it's a challenge because it's a big road. People are going down that road pretty quick. They're on their way to Lake Powell or some other place, and they're excited about that, and they're interested in getting there. And so they're rolling along pretty quick. So, but they're not stopping. They're not stopping and learning about the place as much as they could. They're not stopping and spending money like they could be. So what do? Could we, the community implement some traffic calming features? Could we put in some community gathering areas? Are there ways to get travelers to slow down and stop and learn about the place and spend some money? So our students were working in the studio addressing this issue. So right at the east end of Main Street, there's this big curve that turns back to the south. And that's what it is. It's just a great big curve, and people keep on going. So what's the solution? It's not hard. Change the composition of the road. The hard part is getting UDOT to participate with the city and figure out a solution. But can we put some calming measures in there? Can we make it a four-way stop, for instance, like the students were proposing? A roundabout would also do some good as well. Encouraging people, though, to slow down, take advantage of the place, learn about it, and realize where in the world they really are, that it's a really cool place. It can be done, but it takes effort. In 2017, we were invited by the Best Friends nonprofit organization to work with them on a design charrette to address issues associated with the sanctuary to the north of town. And in addition, students addressed a property on Main Street in Kanab. So our students went down there, we did a field trip, and here's some students that got to take a pup home for the night. You can do that from the sanctuary. You can take a dog or a pet home for the night and be with them. It's a really interesting place for sure. We worked with Kelly Stoll here. He's the executive director for the Center of Business, Education, and the Arts in Kane County. And we worked with Best Friends officials and local stakeholders, and we spent some time on our charrette and throughout the Capstone studio looking at a bunch of issues. One of the things is, though, that Best Friends had bought this old motel on the west end of Main Street in Kanab. A very kind of derelict old place, and they didn't really know what to do with it, but they bought it. And in so doing, they were creating a bit of apprehension and concern on the part of the locals that these newcomers were coming in and buying up the town, and what are they doing? And they got all these dogs and all that stuff. And so what do you do? What's this thing? What can it be? So what if this old motel could be converted to a pet-friendly motel and help support the Best Friends mission and become a pet-friendly business? The students helped then generate a lot of ideas, including a dog park and parking and drainage and modifications to that and landscaping, et cetera. So here's Kelly, looking a little older, but Best Friends Roadhouse now and Mercantile is now a key hospitality asset to the community. The community has figured out that they're not the adversary, that they are good partners, and they can work together. When you Google on TripAdvisor where to stay in Kanab, the Roadhouse pops up first. And so the students' concepts greatly influenced the ultimate design and construction of this project. Designers particularly found this, the high quality contextual information that the students produced to be critical and useful in carrying the thing forward. And you can see there what Kelly had to say about it, singing really praises of the process as we went along. If you come up to the southern part of Utah County, we worked with Santaquin City in 2021. Santaquin is one of the last holdouts. They are able to, they have some fruit production in their community, a lot of ag that still exists. And so they're experiencing tremendous development pressure though, to convert those beautiful orchards to houses. Turns out prime ag land grows great houses, but you can't go backward, right? Nobody's housing development has been turned back into a farm, right? They're concerned about protecting their ag land. They're concerned about agritourism, hoping that that can be a support to them. Affordable housing, how can you find places for folks to live nearby who work on these farms? How do you connect the place that's constantly being severed by more and more roads and other things with trails? And they have this issue with Main Street being a state road as well. Students applied a lot of self-motivation. One student in particular created a 3D printed model of the entire place. The vertical scale is exaggerated here, but this is a physical model that then we cast a Google image down on top of it, of the place. And it gives people a much different understanding. Anytime you can show them in a physical model what's going on, it helps them understand what's happening. So working in 3 dimensions is so important. It's a great tool. A lot of effort. 2,000 plus man hours are generated or used during these Charrette weeks by these students. It's an incredible experience. So one of the things the city was concerned about is similar to Kanab. They've got this big road going through and they don't have a Main Street-like experience, and they really don't know how to address that right on their Main Street. So their idea was, could we move it off of Main Street a block? And they had the thought of that, and they had intentionally started to plan a new city hall to be placed on a corner, a block south of Main Street on Center Street. So first south instead of Main Street. And they were, the students then took this idea to heart, and they supported and strengthened that idea by working on this concept to create a block that now will host community activities and events and festivals, and really become what we would call a civic campus, to allow traffic to be slowed or stopped when the city wants it to accommodate all kinds of different things. So here's Jason Bond, Assistant City Manager from Santaquin City, talking about that.
Our experience working with Utah State University and the students in the Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning program was great. One specific idea that the students explored was to focus development on our 100 South. Our main street is US Highway 6 and is a UDOT facility. Therefore, it experiences heavier traffic, and the lack of control makes it difficult to create a Main Street look and feel that the community desires. The students' outside perspective and creative thinking really helped the city acknowledge some incredible potential for walkability, beautification, and other economic benefits, which will help preserve the small-town agricultural character of Santaquin City. The city is currently building a new city hall on 100 South and has other civic uses and open land which can be improved or redeveloped. The charrette the students conducted helped strengthen the city's plans and efforts to create a civic campus that will be an attraction for a variety of reasons. This project finished over 2 years ago, and city council members still reference some of the students' ideas for 100 South as more planning and construction happen in the area. We appreciate Utah State University and their efforts to help Santaquin City plan for the future.
So one of the things Jason didn't say there, he alluded to it though, he said really the value of this charrette experience was in the journey. for the people, the stakeholders who are involved. Then they're still talking about it, they're still referencing it, and they're looking beyond the now and looking out a little further and being much more visionary. We were invited in 2022, last year, to participate and partner with South Salt Lake, just next door here. Lots of issues here. They need some rec facilities and learning facilities in their town, gentrification, that graduation of more lower income urban areas changing to more wealthy areas with people moving in and pushing other folks out. That's a big concern. Equity across the board was a concern and something they wanted addressed. Crime, safety, food security in an urban environment. So here's Kelly Miranda and Sharon Hari speaking about the students' involvement in South Salt Lake.
Working with USU students, they worked to understand the unique characteristics of our South Salt Lake community. They understood the fact that we wanted to prioritize equity within our plan and really took that to heart as they developed their Charrette project. Being young professionals, they brought creative new ideas, young perspectives that really helped develop a plan that we knew would overall meet South Salt Lake goals and values. The students came to us without any preconceived notion of what we wanted to be and without a lot of ego. And the students really dug in and looked at the opportunities that we needed the most, which were jobs, affordable housing, quality schools, recreation, and health. And they really crafted specific, detailed solutions on those topics. We are now using these materials in meetings with partners, specifically people who own a lot of land in our community. Granite School District is one of them. They are kind of seeing the light that we saw, that there's an opportunity with the lands that they have to do some of the things that achieve their goals too, including housing for students and for teachers, recreation, health, and for creating bigger and better programs for job opportunities. As a small city, we don't have a lot of resources for paying for every plan we'd like, and Utah State gave us a very affordable solution, and the students gave us so much more than we asked for and really stretched our own way of looking at the world, and we were forever grateful for that.
Here's a pic of our students meeting with city officials and staff during a field trip. This iconic water tower just over here is something that the students focused on, taking that place and reinforcing and evolving what they call a creative industries zone by proposing a cultural market district around that water tower area, promoting celebration of cultural diversity, supporting growers and local businesses, developing community branding activities, providing public space for community engagement, and creating a food hub. And you can see an outdoor plaza public place like this would be a great opportunity for community events and performances, play, and so forth. Another issue that the students studied was the need for additional recreation and learning facilities. Granite High School, as you may remember, was a long-standing asset over here in South Salt Lake, and a big part of their culture, but it went away. It was demolished and the students redistributed across the district. And so something about the community fabric was lost. So here's an image, looking, there we go, to the northwest on 27th South and State, this property that is owned by, partly owned by the city and I believe by Granite School District, but they looked at partnering, could some recreation and learning facilities be implemented there? And that's what's illustrated here, really in a really cool idea, a new community rec center, connecting the cultural market district and bringing additional facilities to the community. And students were able to consult and collaborate with architects who volunteered their time, architects from Denver, to program this building. And this shows some great potential. And as Sharon said, they're working with the Granite School District now to determine where some partnerships can happen. Real quick, so last year, or this last winter, we talked about, like everyone else was talking about, the Great Salt Lake and studying that, helping our understanding, grow our understanding of the Great Salt Lake. No one needs to tell us what these issues are. They're still there. As Brian knows, they are still all there, and he's saddled with figuring out how to address those and herd all the cats to make some things happen. It's a tremendously complicated and challenging set of problems on a regional basis. So what we looked at was how do you take something like that and recognize that the Great Salt Lake's not going to be saved or protected by one or two actions, but it's going to take scores of initiatives and appropriations and private investments and creative input from lots and lots of entities and individuals to come up with something. Our students said, what about some design-related ideas to provide some positive help? So we'll look at a couple of those. This image shows the area where Mill Creek at the bottom right of the screen meets the Jordan River that's running vertically through the middle of the slide. Doesn't look like much. Looks like kind of a bunch of straight lines, doesn't it? The shaded areas where the students focus their efforts, so you can recognize the spaghetti bowl on the kind of toward the top right, I-215 on the left third over here of your screen. Mill Creek runs down, it's basically in a pipe, as are most of our creeks and streams running from the mountains to the Great Salt Lake, or to the river rather. Water quality is an issue. Access to it certainly is very limited. This rail yard and commercial properties highlighted here were once kind of on the outskirts of town, right? And the city's grown up around it, and we know we're going to continue to grow. The trajectory is still like this, and it shows no sign of stopping. And so it's going to continue to tax our space and our resources and continue to pressure us to maintain or hopefully improve our quality of life. So the need for some high quality open space will only continue to grow in importance, and these multifunctional spaces like this one, for instance, can work as nature's filter and as well as providing passive and active recreation opportunities. And it's doing some of that right now, but it's not too pretty, as you can tell. This is where the river, or excuse me, Mill Creek comes into the river. It's abysmal. Frankly, it is, right? That's not what rivers are supposed to look like. The banks aren't supposed to be straight and steep where you just kind of fall in. There's a few birds there, thankfully. They still manage to survive, but the ecological diversity is highly compromised in this situation, as well as the lack of visual interest, aesthetics, amenities, and so forth. So what can we do? Okay, what if you remember that Salt Lake City is known as the crossroads of the West, right? Literally, just over here at the Spaghetti Bowl is the crossroads where I-80 connects with I-15. And so what you're seeing here is, what if a large mixed-use development were located where that rail area and commercial area is located now? And what if it were housing 30, 40,000 people in 20, 25 years? And wouldn't that be amazing, because those folks that chose to live there in a more dense configuration, they would have access to anywhere they wanted to go very, very quickly. They hop on one freeway or another and go wherever. And they'd have this park, this central park, that would include river restoration, improved water quality, and quantity directed toward the Great Salt Lake, improved wildlife habitat, outdoor recreation opportunities. They'd have this as a public asset and amenity right in their backyard. This is an audacious idea. This is not just sort of, you know, designing a boardwalk or something. This is a big deal, but we've done large-scale visionary projects. Just go down the road to where we just tore out the old penitentiary, and the point is this huge mixed-use development that's now going to connect the Salt Lake and Utah Valleys and the Silicon Slopes tech industries. We've done these kinds of things before, and we can do more of them. They're hard to envision, but we can do them. And there's a lot of opportunity here, billions of dollars of potential economic value, as well as the value to people and the environment. Last one, what about suburban development? up on the eastern edge of the Great Salt Lake. It needs to be continuous, but it's not. It's fragmented, and it's under immense pressure from development moving from the east to the west along the I-15 corridor, especially between Salt Lake and Ogden. It's this delicate and vital wetland area and upland ecosystem that's threatened, and it needs to be addressed. And the ecological value needs to be improved. We looked at a relatively undeveloped area that's still ag land in the area of West Haven in Weber County. What if development was concentrated in some areas in different densities and carefully arranged or planned around existing drainage systems rather than all the stormwater going in pipes and running to the lake? What if the natural systems were working and delivering there right on the spot, on site? And these natural fingers, if you can see them weaving up through the neighborhood, would then help connect, more fully connect the lake to the mountains. There's a lot going on there, a lot of opportunity, water management, mixed types of housing. The community could grow, wetlands could be enhanced, that area, that edge along the Great Salt Lake could be improved and protected. There's going to be bugs. People always say, well, there's a lot of bugs out there. Well, we're moving out there, guys. We keep pushing out there. We got to figure out how to live with the bugs. People live with bugs all over the country, right? You move to Florida, you just have a screened porch, right? We can do that. And so the ecology needs to exist along with people. Where we go next, we're going to Bear Lake. We were invited by the Institute of Land, Water, and Air to partner with them, and that will be our charrette for next year. So the quick takeaways are, you can do this. We should do more of this. Look for opportunities to bring together members of the community who don't normally work together and collaborate. Those who might not be involved in planning conversations, get them involved. Follow the process that we've talked about. We do that with our students. Get them in small groups. Get them engaged and focused, not just at a planning commission meeting, or not just at the city council, but focused intently on something. And then get them talking to other groups and seeing how they interact and see what possibilities and constraints there are. It's an iterative process. It rolls along, but there's some feedback loops, and you do it again and again and again. I've heard it said that the greater the stakeholder participation, the better the outcome. And also, when you're part of the idea, it's harder to be a critic, right? So let's get as many folks as we can together to participate. Build on the strengths of your community that already exists there. Be careful not to reach, I think, too far beyond something that you're not. Recognize who you are and capitalize on that. Focus on the strengths and positive attributes and amenities, natural features of your place. Be willing to look at ideas like that crazy one of, converting the rail yards and commercial area by the Spaghetti Bowl to a mixed-use community. That's a big idea. Is it a bad one? I don't think so. There are lots and lots of ideas. Those need to be filtered out and explored, and there's some gems in there to be found. Lots of hurdles with any visionary idea, but they should be entertained. Consider the context of where you're working, and remember to look at the regional considerations, even on when you're considering a specific site. Remember that everything is connected, everything. People are just one part or one thread of nature's web, right? And so everything we do has consequences. Remember those things. Thanks for letting me talk to you today. I appreciate your time.
Utah State University is a Research R1 university. If you had to pick out a couple of words to talk about what characterizes research across the entire campus, two of them I would pick out are vision and energy. Dave, I want to thank you for showing us today the vision and the energy that the students bring to addressing complex problems of our time. And I wanted to mention that because it doesn't matter if you're a laboratory scientist, a sheep geneticist, a performing artist, or a landscape architecture person. Vision and energy are at the heart of research in all of those areas. I also want to take a moment to talk about one person who has the most vision and energy of anyone I know. So I want to give a last shout out in research landscapes. This is Noel Crockett's vision and energy, research landscapes. So one last time, Noel, thank you. Teamwork. And so for the next few minutes, we have just a few minutes, we're going to take a few questions from the floor, maybe up to 3 questions, and let's just discuss. So anybody got a burning question? I'll start us with one quick. Dave, are there particular projects where you find your students that are just really engaged, that of all the ones you presented, which ones have students just jumped at? Are they equal?
It is commensurate or reciprocal. What's the right word? It depends on the stakeholder. If the stakeholders are engaged and interacting with us, then the students are engaged. And so that willingness to participate on the stakeholders' part is definitely part of this. This Great Salt Lake thing, I was telling Jan earlier before the meeting, our students now know more about the Great Salt Lake than 99% of their peers. They were absorbing like sponges this information about the Great Salt Lake. It was dynamic, it was full of energy and enthusiasm. I think they're always engaged and interested. This one in particular was very, very energy driven.
A topic of their lifetime.
For sure.
Yes, we've got a couple questions. Let me go first here.
Dave, thank you. Soren Simonson with the Jordan River Commission. It's great to be with you. I've participated in some charrettes with Dave before, very exciting, and it's just really great to see the work produced by these students. Quick question. I'm really intrigued by the one that you did around the Jordan River and Mill Creek confluence. I would have loved to have been engaged and involved with this, but I'm curious to know if any of the results of that are published somewhere, and if we can help share and distribute ideas to the broader community. There are many similar initiatives happening right now all across the Jordan River, from the Point development in Draper, which is the redevelopment of the prison site, to projects in Salt Lake City, where the recent announcement of the closure of the Gatsby Power Plant for Rocky Mountain Power and redevelopment of 100 acres are taking place. And we would love to explore ways that we can tap into these ideas. There may be future charrette opportunities, but I think it would be really interesting to learn from some of the ideas that came out of this that may be applicable in other locations as well.
Thanks, Soren. You're absolutely right, and in hindsight, these things are dynamic and they function during a semester, right? And so getting all the parts and pieces and cats herded to the right place and time is difficult. Could and should we have had you involved? Yes, especially on the Jordan River project, and you're invited to always participate with us. Yes, this information is available. These panels in the back kind of highlight these 5 projects that our students worked on this semester, and if there's a little QR code that you can connect to kind of a folio, a shortened report of each of those. The Salt Lake Collaborative, the Media Collaborative, is now going to pick those up and have those available as well. So yes, you're welcome to that information. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Likely you've all heard of the Utah Inland Port Authority, And there seems to be a disturbing trend of project areas popping up at the whim of the hope for economic development in that community. I sincerely wish that those communities would exercise a charrette process so that they can come up with a better vision instead of the possible warehouse district development that they would be looking forward to. So this is very inspiring, and I want to thank you so much for your work. And I hope this will catch on before it's too late with upcoming proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. You're such a longstanding advocate, Lynn, right?
Yes.
Advocating for the Great Salt Lake long before lots of other folks. And thank you for your advocacy.
We'll have one more question.
With this being such a large-scale issue spanning innumerable agencies, complexities, there's legal layers, there's design layers, funding layers, all of it. It's a massively complex issue. What agency, individual, department, organization is best suited to spearhead it? It seems like kind of a unifying framework, kind of somehow organizing all those disparate elements.
Brian, come up here and answer this question. Really? Sorry? I think Brian should take a stab at this because that's what he does.
I don't know, Mike, that's kind of what the intent is on the Great Salt Lake Commissioner position, is to try to herd those cats and bring them together in a more cogent way than we have heretofore operated. That's not a dig on what we've been doing. I think that we've been doing a lot, but I think it's time for us now to start pulling together more in the same direction, and that's the intent.
Well, we welcome everyone to stay and continue the conversation, but we're going to bring the formal program to a close at this point. I'd like to thank Dave again for an outstanding presentation
Thank you.
And bringing us into the world of charrette. Thank you.
You're very welcome.